friends. We're going to next start on our crime and umbrella. So what I'm going to do is share my screen so that we can totally concentrate on the PowerPoints. And then, so you won't be seeing any video of me. And then we'll go ahead and I'll come back to you to summarize what we just talked about. Okay, so I'm going to turn my video off here. And then I'm going to go to the PowerPoint and we'll talk about our commercial and our crime and umbrella policies. So that's what this section is going to be. Now, again, you are in the right place if you've been struggling with property and casualty pre-licensing state exam. You've taken a self-study or classroom class, and there's so much material. It's very hard to figure out exactly what's important. So that's why we're here. We want to do a streamlined approach to what is important on that state test so we can learn the key points for each subject. Now, about myself, I've been in the industry for over 30 years, and I've been teaching insurance classes for 27 years. I'm actually a subject matter expert for Pearson VUE. And I've purchased several insurance agencies in addition to owning this insurance school. So I can safely say that I'm in the trenches with you guys. Now, the reason why I'm telling you that is so that I can give you these examples and you know that they're real examples for you, so that will help you understand what we're talking about, the concepts, to put it all together so that you can pass the state test. I'd love for you to follow me on Facebook and LinkedIn. It's under Tammy Delora Insurance Educators. And my motto is prepare, which is what we're doing. Repeat, repeat, repeat. We're going to do a lot of repetition. I tell my students over and over again that that is the only way to learn this. Is you've got to read it over and over again. You've got to memorize. Flashcards are great for that. And that will give you the confidence to pass the test. So inhale confidence and exhale doubt. We generate fears while we sit and we overcome them by action. This is by Dr. Henry Link. And I love this saying because this is exactly what we're doing. I know some of you are very fearful about trying to pass the state test. Maybe you've already tried to pass and you couldn't pass. But hopefully this will help you as far as this is what we're going to do. We're going to take action so that you can get more secure and more confident about passing. Now, the very first thing that we're going to start with is this crime coverage form. Now, crime can be a monoline policy, which means it can be by itself, or it can be part of that CPP. Now, remember that commercial package policy is we're building one policy at a time. So the reason why we have crime is because our commercial property form that we talked about before, the building and personal property coverage form, it excludes money. Now, the only policy out there that I can think of that includes money would be your homeowner policy, and that's a $200 limit there. So your commercial property totally excludes money. So that is why we need to write this policy to cover the insured's money and other situations that we're going to talk about that are not covered by that commercial property coverage form, because a business does need coverage if their money were to get stolen. Now, even though you may have some of these crime forms that we're going to talk about, none of them will cover employee theft. And not only does the commercial property policy exclude money, but it excludes employee theft. So therefore, if an employee steals from a business, even if that business has a special policy. Now, remember, the special policy is the only commercial policy that includes theft. Even if they have a special policy, employee theft will not be covered. So you will need to write an employee theft or an employee dishonesty crime policy. And what this does is it not only covers employee theft for money, but it covers any type of theft that they may steal as far as money and business property. So if a business goes in and their computers have been stolen, their money's been stolen, some furniture's been stolen, for example, this is the policy that's going to cover that is employee theft, employee dishonesty. It is the only policy for employee theft. Now, another crime policy would be forgery or alteration. And a lot of businesses use this as far as if someone were to forge their checks. Coverage is provided worldwide. Another crime policy you have is a computer fraud policy. So this coverage covers loss or damage to money, securities, and other property due to the use of a computer to fraudulently transfer the property from inside the premises or banking premises to a place or person outside the premises. Again, this coverage is worldwide. So these are 3 different types of crime policies or forms that we have talked about so far. Now, one of the most popular crime forms out there is money and securities, and usually you'll see it as M&S. So it covers losses of money and securities resulting from theft, disappearance, or destruction. So that's pretty broad. Disappearance, what happened to your money? Well, it disappeared. Well, of course, the insured is going to have to maintain records of the money and securities so that the insurer can verify the amount of loss. Now, in order for coverage to apply, the money and securities must have been at the insured's premises, at a financial institution, at the home of the insured or the insured's employee. So maybe they took it home with them, thinking they're going to do a deposit the next morning, and their house gets broken into. Now, with this money and securities, remember, all of these crime policies exclude the theft of employees. So you're still going to have that employee dishonesty form. Now, there are separate limits, and usually what they do is they'll have a separate limit for the inside and a separate limit for the outside of the premises. So let's say that the business takes in a max of $5,000 a day, and maybe they keep $200 cash. So you could have a $5,200 inside limit and a $5,000 outside limit, or they could be the same. So, but the main thing to know is that it is an inside and outside limit, that it is theft, disappearance, or destruction. Now, when we're talking about these crime policies, we really have to nail down these crime definitions. So when you think about burglary, okay, I want you to think about visible marks like kicking in the door, explosive, chemicals, electricity. If someone takes a key and they go into the house and there's no visible marks, that is not considered burglary. Okay. Burglary is, there must be evidence of forcible entry or exit, such as visible marks. Now, safe burglary is the same thing, but it is a safe and it has to have visible marks. Now, robbery is the unlawful taking of property from the care and custody of another person. They have to threaten or cause bodily harm. Okay. Now, that is the main thing. It's more like an in-your-face type thing. If you come home one day and all your stuff has been stolen, you have not been robbed. Okay. That is more of a theft type thing. Now, if they kick in the door, that's more burglary. But robbery, think of robbery as being a threaten to cause bodily harm to a person. Now, theft is the unlawful taking of property. Now, theft includes all of this. So theft is any act of stealing. So that's why when you have these policies, if you have theft, then you have burglary, you have robbery, you have any act of stealing. So be sure to nail down those definite crime forms, because those are very, very important for your test. Now, when it comes to a commercial umbrella, we already talked about a personal umbrella, and it works the same way, but we're talking about different underlying coverages now. So what do we say with umbrella in the personal is what we're going to say here, that it is all about higher limits, and sometimes it's about broader coverages. Sometimes umbrellas will have broader coverage than your underlying limits. Now, I am going to go back over to my whiteboard and kind of do the same thing that I did with your personal umbrella. So let's talk a little bit about what our commercial umbrella does and what type of underlying coverages that are over this commercial umbrella. Usually your commercial umbrellas, of course, all of them start at 1 million, and they can go up pretty high in the commercial world. I've seen when I worked for another corporation, we would write commercial umbrellas 50 million, 100 million, that type of thing. So anyway, commercial umbrellas and personal umbrellas could have like a minimum of 1 million limit. Now they go over 3 separate policies. So they'll go over that commercial general liability that we talked about before. And then again, it's all about liabilities. And then it'll go over your business auto liability. Okay. And then it will go over your employer liability. All right. So these are the 3 major underlying coverages that it goes over. Now, these underlying coverages have to have an underlying limit. And you don't need to memorize this because different companies do different things, but this is pretty much real life. Is they're going to want you to go pretty high here. So maybe $1 million for each one of these. Okay. So what happens here is, let's say that there is a situation where a company manufactures a product and the product explodes, or it causes some type of bodily injury and property damage to a third party. Okay, so you have a CGL products claim. So let's just say, and I'm making this up as we go along, that it's a $1.5 million claim. Well, just like in your personal umbrella situation, is we always totally exhaust the underlying limits. So the CGL policy will pay the first $1 million, and then the umbrella will pay the rest of that, which is going to be $500,000. Okay. Now, let's say that you have a business auto claim and, your employees are driving the business auto. So maybe one falls asleep, they're negligent, and they have a really bad accident. And again, let's just make it easy and say it's a $1.5 million accident. Then, of course, your business auto is going to totally exhaust that underlying limit, which is $1 million. Okay. And then your umbrella will pay the rest of that, which of course is the $500,000. Now, employer's liability, remember, you don't see a lot of employer liability claims, but, let's say that there was a plant explosion and a lot of employees were injured and, the employer is negligent. And so you have those third-party claims come in, the spouses, children. So what happens here is, let's just say the same settlement is $1.5 million. Okay. And your employer's liability now will pay, again, we're going to totally exhaust those underlying limits, and then your umbrella will pay the rest. All right. So just like the personal umbrella, remember the personal umbrella is all about homeowner Section 2 liability and personal auto liability. Here we're talking about commercial general liability, business auto liability, and employer liability. And just like we had in our personal umbrella, we have a self-insured retention, which is your deductible. And this only takes place if these three underlying coverages do not cover the claim, but the umbrella does. And that's where broader coverages comes in. Because remember, umbrellas are all about higher limits, which is what we just did, or about broader coverages. Okay, so usually maybe your SIR, maybe your deductible, they're a little bit higher here. Again, you don't need to memorize this. Different companies do different things. So let's say that there is a claim that is not paid by the underlying coverages. And we'll just make it easy. And let's say that this claim is in the amount of the damages, we'll just say $50,000. And the CGL policy says, nope, we're not paying for it. Business auto, nope. Employer liability, nope. Commercial umbrella does because it has broader coverage. So the insured pays the first $10,000. So again, the insured pays the SIR, which is the deductible of $10,000. Okay. And then the umbrella pays the other $40,000. Okay, so that is your commercial umbrella. It goes over three major underlying coverages. It's a total separate policy. That's an extra layer of liability. So it's higher limits, or it could be broader coverages. And in that case, we'll use our deductible. So you're always going to exhaust an underlying, then an umbrella, or exhaust that self-insured retention and then an umbrella. Okay, so I'm going to come back to you. And we're going to go back over to the PowerPoint and read over here some information that we have. So what is the general nature of an umbrella? It covers the catastrophic liability exposures to business risk. They have higher limits and sometimes they have broader coverages. Your underlying coverages are your CGL, your business auto, and your employer's liability. The primary underlying limits, that $1 million that I showed you, those are set by the insurance company. And then before the umbrella policy will provide coverage, what do you need to do? You've got to totally exhaust that underlying policy. Now, the self-insured retention will only take place if the if the underlying coverages exclude that loss and the umbrella doesn't. In other words, it has broader coverage. Okay, so the main thing you need to know for your test is that it is broader coverage, it is higher limits, and what are those minimum limits there? And also, they could give you an example where, like I showed you, where maybe the underlying coverages are not providing coverage, and there is a $1 million umbrella, and there's a self-insured retention of 10,000, and there is a claim of 50,000. How would that work? So you definitely need to know that. That's a great share screen there for you to capture. Okay, friends, I'm going to come back to you here. So that basically is going to cover all of our commercial crime and our commercial umbrella. So when it comes to crime, be sure to really know those terms and concepts. Burglary, visible signs, robbery, in your face threatening, theft, any act of stealing, and then know those 4 or 5 crime coverage forms. Just know the general information about those. When it comes to your umbrella, know that it's all about higher limits, broader coverages, and what your underlying coverages are as far as CGL, business auto liability, and your employer's liability. It's all about your liability limits. It's an extra layer of liability. So what I'm going to do here is go back to the PowerPoint. And again, I hope this supplemental material helps you so that you can understand these important concepts. Remember to always prepare, read that information in your book a few times. Repetition, repeating it over and over to yourself will give you confidence. Always about taking action. Okay, so I will see you in the next module.